Hey, I'm Charlie,
And I'm Luke.
and we're travel bloggers at charlieontravel.com. And in this podcast, we're going to be talking about our recent trip to Ibiza.
Yes, and we visited Ibiza this April in 2024, which is not the Ibiza high season, but there's some really good reasons why you should visit this island off the coast of Spain, even when it's not the middle of summer. So I'm going to ask Charlie some questions. First up, why should you visit Ibiza in the off season?
Well, the first reason to visit in the off season is you can get through the airport really quickly, so there's not much hanging around. I think we were in and out of Ibiza airport in about 10 minutes after landing, whereas high season it's pretty packed out here, so it takes a long time. Probably the main reason though is that the island itself isn't as crowded in the off season. The weather's still good. We had days of 20, 21, 22 degrees Celsius, which is great. So nice sunny weather, blue skies most days as well, without being stiflingly hot. And we didn't have to do things like make reservations at restaurants and plan everything that we wanted to do ahead of time, which for Ibiza, if you're travelling in high season, it's pretty necessary to be doing things like booking restaurants in advance, which means not as much flexibility in travelling. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Luke?
Yeah, it is also a lot cheaper to visit Ibiza in the off season. So prices for accommodation go up by 5 times during the summer. So you can get a reasonably good deal on accommodation if you want to visit in April. There's also no mosquitoes, which is nice. Yeah. So next question, when is the off season in Ibiza?
Well, clubbing tends to start around mid-April. That's when the big clubs actually open. So off season is sort of outside of that summer peak that extends from mid-April all the way through to probably the end of September, really. So all of the winter months plus also that early springtime.
Yeah, I would see it a little bit differently. I think the biggest clubs open last week of April or early May. So peak season will be May, June, July, and August. And then you've probably got the shoulder season either side. So that's March, April, and September, October. And then you've got the winter months as well, which is November, December, January, and February. Nothing will be open very much at all in the winter months, but in the shoulder season, stuff is still open, and that can be a good time to visit Ibiza. There are 1 or 2 clubs open in, say, April and March. However, the big clubs really are open from in that peak season. So, Charlie, where are the best places to stay in Ibiza in the off season?
Cool, you're testing my knowledge of the areas. So we stayed in a couple of places. We started off near the really beautiful, pretty and quaint village of Sant Josep, just in a villa in the countryside there, which was great because that side of the island is quiet. It's got a lot of more traditional, quintessential Spanish village type of feel, and there's also, within 20 minutes drive, some nice beaches as well if you're around that area. And then we spent most of our time in Ibiza staying near Sant Vicent, which is really more for the nature lovers and the outdoorsy people. So that's where the most mountainous part of Ibiza is. And though it doesn't have massive peaks, it does have pretty verdant green rolling mountains that you can find accommodation that has nice views of as well. I would also recommend staying in Ibiza town if you're the kind of person that likes a bit more buzz and razzmatazz, because whilst it's not as touristy, I guess, as the San Antonio area, it still has a really quaint old town part to it and some really nice streets. And the strip isn't actually as big and booming as you might think in the town. It's actually a lot smaller, lovelier, lots of nice bars, eating on the street, eating outside, type of vibe. What would you say, Luke?
Yeah, I think that you're totally right about Ibiza town. I was really surprised by how beautiful Ibiza Old Town was, and it's not as built up as you might think if you haven't visited the island before. A lot of the built up area of Ibiza is actually in San Antonio. So if you are staying in Ibiza town, then you can get a nice accommodation in the old town and still be pretty close to some of the things to do and see. You've also got Santa Eulària, which is the third city. They're all small cities in Ibiza, which might be a good option if you have small kids, something like that. It's a mix between Ibiza town and San Antonio. A couple of other places I would mention, you've got San Carlos, which is a village that's inland, and that had a really nice vibe, a couple of nice restaurants, and It also is close to the Las Delias hippie market, which is a big deal in Ibiza. And the last place I would mention is Sant Gertrudis, which is a bit of a shishi, posh, high-end village where you can get very expensive children's clothes and such, but it is also very nice.
Oh, the other thing I would just add though is part of where you stay massively depends on whether you're going to be renting a car or a moped as well. If you don't drive, and it's probably better off, you're probably better off staying in Ibiza town, because then you'll be able to get buses there or from Santa Eulària or San Antonio. Whereas some of these places we're mentioning, like San Gertrudis and San Carlos, they're much more villagey, and so they're not as well connected to transport links as other parts of the island. If you do have a car, then it's great because you can stay further out in different places, you can rent a villa, and you can probably get a better deal on accommodation as well if you're not tied to staying close to the big cities.
So what can you do in Ibiza in the off season?
Yeah, great question. So we spend a lot of our time hiking, biking. Swimming, it's a little bit too cold for, but if you don't mind a cold water swim or dip, then there's definitely a lot of swimming. You can take boat trips out from Ibiza, and you can spend your time, if you've got a car or a scooter, visiting all of the beautiful little villages around Ibiza as well, which I definitely recommend doing. What was your favourite activity that we did, Luke?
Well, my favourite activity, I think, was the road trip that we did around Ibiza, where we stopped at the little villages and we just got a sense of the island, and we saw some of the off the beaten tracks part of the towns, a couple of really nice restaurants such as Aubergine up on the way to San Carlos. So yeah, there's plenty to do even in the off season. I would say you can also still go and have a mini party if you want to go somewhere like Club Chinois even in the off season. I'd also say that the beaches, it's warm enough definitely to sit on the beach all day and relax and stay by the pool. It just isn't ideal for swimming, so maybe that's something that would be okay in September, October after the summer heat has warmed the water up. But for the spring shoulder season or the winter, it's probably going to be too cold to swim. So what app can you use to hike in Ibiza?
I think we used the All Trails app, right?
Yes, All Trails is the best app for hiking in Ibiza. There's lots of great hiking routes. We found a hiking route up in the northeast of the island where we hiked for about 3 hours and we only saw one or two other people, and we ended at a secluded beach all to ourselves, which was really nice.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And was that the same app for cycling routes in Ibiza, or would you recommend using a different app?
So we were recommended by the local bike rental guy who we met in Santa Eulària that we used the Wikilocs app. Unfortunately, the app was down while we visited and we used Komoot instead, which was functional but probably not ideal. It did send us a couple of wrong ways. Yeah. So Wikilocs should be the one that you download and seemed to be the one that were recommended by locals.
Yeah, if you're renting bikes as well, then you can also check with the people that you're renting from to see if there's any routes that they would specifically recommend. When we rented, though our guy wasn't the most forthcoming with information, he did have a couple of different routes signposted on a board as well.
What are the best beaches in Ibiza?
Great question. Ibiza has loads of amazing beaches, and it depends a little bit on what you like from your beach. I think for me, San Vicent was one of the best beaches because it was a large expanse of sand, beautiful blue water, and not too built up, so there wasn't too much going on there. There was a handful of restaurants, and actually in the shoulder season, only 2 or 3 of them were open at that time as well, which is all you actually need for a beach day, and only a couple of shops as well. So that was lovely. What was the name of that? Can you remember the name of the bay we went to on our road trip day?
Yeah, so if it's on the road trip day, we visited Cala, which was really beautiful and looked like a great little spot to hang out in for a beach holiday, if for a more low-key one. It had a couple of beaches, a couple of restaurants, had a couple of shops. It was a really nice, beautiful, secluded spot. We also, when we were cycling, we saw a couple of beaches. So we saw Cala Figueres, Cala Nova, and Aguas Blancas, all of which were great beaches on the northeast side of the island. Aguas Blancas was totally underdeveloped, but there were a couple of other people there, so that was a nice get away from it all kind of beach. Whereas Figueres and Cala were both a little bit more built up, but not too much so. So they were both fantastic places to visit.
I thought Cala was particularly beautiful as well. Actually, not because of the buildings around it, but because the beachfront itself was very golden sand compared to some of the sands. And actually, the sand colour and quality seemed to vary quite a lot, where over by Ibiza town, it was actually like a sort of darker, grey and grainier sand. Whereas actually that side by Cala was a lot more sort of golden and fine sand if, you're a sand aficionado.
Where's the best place to stay in Ibiza?
Did we not already answer this?
We already did this. What are the best things to eat in Ibiza?
Ooh, great question. So Ibiza has all of the traditional Spanish food that you can think of. As vegetarians, for us, that was mainly Spanish omelette, pimientos padrón. Actually, I didn't have any patatas bravas, but you said that you did.
I had patatas bravas, and I had many olives, and I had a veggie paella as well.
Yeah. And then I think if you do eat fish, there's a lot of great fish and seafood that seems to be around that seem very fresh. And otherwise, because of the sort of hippie scene, there is also a good amount of vegan cafes and alternative types of food as well. So you can be sure to get a few different things.
Yeah, I would mention the Aubergine Farm to Table restaurant that we visited on the way to San Carlos. That was a kind of there's a fine dining scene in Ibiza that caters to the yacht crowd. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that does start to open up even in the off season. So I had a great homemade ravioli. You had a salad. We had bread alioli, homemade juice. It was all pretty reasonable. I mean, it was €30 per person, which is a bit expensive. So it's on the more expensive side, but not unaffordable.
I think the other place though we need to shout out is our favorite, which was the small pizza place in San Carlos.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Can you remember what it was called?
No.
Okay, well, I'll look it up. Check out the blog because it's going to be on the blog. But that was a fabulous, thin crust pizza place with just, it was really low key, not anything beautiful to look at, but it had a few nice wooden tables and stools outside, so you could just get a pizza. It's only about sort of 11, 12 euros for a pizza. They've got loads of different toppings, and then you can just eat outside in the sunshine, and it's, a really nice, casual and cheaper way to eat too.
Yeah, that was really nice, and there was a ice cream shop next door that was fantastic. So you can have pizza and ice cream, and I had a homemade brownie as well, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah, definitely recommend that.
Plenty of fantastic things to eat in Ibiza.
And one last question, while we're talking about things to eat, is coffee shops. The coffee scene was pretty great in Ibiza, I thought, as well. Do you want to shout out some of our favourite coffee shops we visited?
Yeah, well, the Monk in Eulària was really a very intense house of coffee, where I had an absolutely fantastic cortado. What did you have?
I had a long black, which was, we got little tasting notes. They told us what roast we had. We had different coffee beans from different origins because we had different kinds of coffee. So they're really, into in particular about their brew, which is really nice.
Yeah, they're more coffee than food, for sure. They seem to be, the coffee is the thing in the Monk. So if you're a big coffee fan, then I'd recommend do check that out.
Yeah, I did add that on a Google review, and they wrote back that actually their food is very good. But unfortunately, I didn't try any of it. Nothing attracted me at that time, but they did have a few little bits like focaccia and brownies, etc. Just nothing that caught my eye.
Yeah, and there was also Miu Miu Cafe in Ibiza town, which was a fantastic place. We went there twice. I had an affogato, so espresso over ice cream. We had pancakes, which were superb.
Yeah, fabulous feta salad.
Yeah, so lots of healthy food, and the waitress was super lovely, and the environment was nice and wooden and relaxed. So that's a really good place to detox in Ibiza if you need a coffee and you need to get over a hangover. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, totally. And then I think probably the third place that I just want to shout out is Granola, which had only opened about a month before we were in Ibiza, and it's a really cute little cafe run by two extremely lovely women in San Josep as well, and they're doing, really nice cortados, oat milk as well. If you're vegan, they do all of the oat milk based drinks. Had a lovely almond croissant, and I'm pretty sure you had a pretty delicious burrata there as well.
Yeah, that was stunning. That was burrata on homemade pesto with a salad, and there was sourdough bread, and it was, yeah, one of the best meals that I had in my time in Ibiza, so I'd highly recommend you check it out.
Awesome.
All right. So like, follow, and subscribe, and
Yes, please. And check out the blog for all of the things where we couldn't remember the name, and you might like the link.
yeah, cool. Thanks everyone. Bye.